Welcome back to Swarzo History. We're on episode 18, Soldiers of Calais, finally. Soldiers of Calais was actually the very first song written for Born to Rule. Basically, it kick-started the whole idea for the album, and it really stemmed from all of the work that I was doing at the time, working on my master's thesis. Mobilization and the power of the English crown during the Wars of the Roses. I was doing a lot of reading about military organization and mobilization and things like that during the Wars of the Roses, and the Calais garrison came up a lot. So why is the Calais garrison so important? So the English took Calais in the 1340s during the Hundred Years' War, and they were able to maintain control of it even after all of the disastrous defeats that we talked about in previous episodes in 1450s. So after Castillon, after all of that stuff, the English crown still held what they called the Calais Pale, or the Pale of Calais, or the Calais Marches, or whatever you want to call it, which basically consisted of Calais itself and surrounding areas, Risbank Tower, Hams, I don't speak French. There's these areas in the vicinity of Calais that the English crown maintained control of despite losing pretty much everything else on the continent. Not only was this super important because of where Calais is, like right on the coast, right across the channel, but also it was a very nice fortified area, and it was a huge hub for the wool trade that England really relied on. Side note, if you didn't know, wool was England's export during this period, and it was very important to funding pretty much any military action ever. In Calais itself, there was this organization, guild kind of set up. Basically, they called themselves the Merchants of the Staple of Calais. I've read some people refer to them as the Staplers, or the Merchant Staple, or what have you. Basically, it was a collective of merchants, wool merchants especially, in Calais, and they would strike deals with the English crown all the time. And this symbiotic relationship worked out where the English crown could put out an order saying that the merchants of the Staple of Calais had all of these exclusive trade privileges. Wool exports had to go through these guys, and in exchange for all of that privilege from the crown, the merchants of the Staple would essentially fund Calais. And on the military side of things, there was a garrison at Calais. It was, for pretty much all intents and purposes, a standing army that the English crown had. Which is interesting because standing armies weren't really the norm during this period. So the way that these garrisons would be filled is through indenture, as I don't know if we've talked about this in any videos, but essentially the king contracts with a captain of a retinue that he will provide X amount of men-at-arms and archers for whatever task. And in return, he will receive whatever payment is agreed upon. So the Calais garrison was filled in that way to a degree, but also the crown made sure that the Calais garrison was at the strength that it needed to be at any given time. So we see in the patent rules and close rules that there were royal officers that were appointed to govern over Calais, its own treasurer, who's responsible for all of the accounting and bookkeeping there. And because the Wars of the Roses are a period of civil war, there's a lot of conflict surrounding control over the Calais garrison. So Anytime you see a new king taking control, you will see new people being appointed in positions of power at Calais. You'll see new treasurers, you'll see new officers being put in places where they can make sure that their guy is in a position of power at Calais so that a rebel faction can't take control of the garrison and lead them against the crown. At least at one point, there was an attempt by the Yorkists to bring an army from Calais to fight against Henry VI. That was in 1459. And when the Calais soldiers realized that they were being used against the crown, they refused to fight and they just left. These guys knew where their money came from. This was a nice job to have because it was more or less a permanent position and it was paid at a standard wage. So it was a nice job to have for someone who wanted to be a soldier consistently and pull in money, earn a living. The idea of rebelling against the crown, because the crown is the authority that gets them paid, was iffy for them. There were a couple of occasions where the money kind of dried up, and there were rumblings of discontent from Calais, and that's kind of what led to the deal with the wool merchant stable. The crown realized it needed to have a steady source of funding for the soldiers at Calais if it wanted to command their loyalty. So for me, the Calais garrison was just a really fun topic at the time, so I wanted to write a song about it. And then as I wrote the song about it, I'm like, you know, there's a lot of other stuff that I could write about in here too. And that's how the whole concept for the album started. When I wrote this song, I wanted to make sure that it was an upbeat song, reading about the situations that Calais ends up being involved in. Just gave me the impression that this was a crew of guys that they had their job and they did it. They knew where their money came from. They wanted to make sure the money kept coming. And they had lines that they didn't really want to cross. As the line in the song goes, loyal service for a fee. Anyway, it's been a while since I've uploaded one of these videos. Also, if you didn't know already, there is a new album out as of November 11th of 2023 called The War You Sought. That album is all based off of my personal experience serving as an infantryman in Afghanistan back in 2012. I do have CDs of both Born to Rule and the new album still available. If you want to buy one of those, you can do that via my website. They're on Bandcamp as well, but my website is a little bit more accurate with shipping costs, so I would recommend you do it there. You can get both CDs as a bundle for a little bit of a discount too. Short and sweet video this time around. There's way too much to say about the Calais garrison. I just recommend, if you're interested in this kind of thing, that you look it up. There's some good stuff out there. You can find my thesis to read for free online. And there's also a good book. Let me see what it's called. It's called The Calais Garrison, War and Military Service in England, 1436 to 1558, and it's by David Brummett. I probably used this book when I was writing my thesis. So if you're into this kind of nitty-gritty of military organization and how armies were raised and paid and fed and supplied and all of that stuff, Calais Garrison is a good thing to look into. It's a very interesting case study for all of that. But I think that's going to do it for this one. I'll see you guys whenever I see you again in another video.